Hello, everyone. Thanks for listening to the Chasing Unleashed podcast, or you might be also watching the Chasing Unleashed podcast. Either way, thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to talk to my guest today, Bridget Quigg. Bridget is a speaker, intuition coach, founder of Your Genius Workshop. And if I need to talk to anybody about being a genius, I think it's going to be Bridget. So I'm going to learn something today. I have an intuition. Bridget, I've been meaning to say that. I have an intuition that today I'm going to learn more about how to become a genius in my own right. Maybe all of our watchers and listeners will as well. But truly, after my previous guest, Lola McCann, introduced us, I said, I've got to have Bridget on the show. So, Bridget, welcome. Thanks for joining us. And
Thank
what
you.
I'm going to do is I'm just going to kick this off and ask you in your own words, tell everybody who's watching or listening a little bit about who Bridget Quigg is.
Sure thing. Thanks, Ann. Happy to be here. So I worked in tech for a long time at startups in Seattle, and I was around a lot of really brilliant people who are working very hard. And at the same time, I was doing a lot of improvisational theater, comedy, musical comedy, all kinds of stage stuff, writing shows. And I started bringing my training from improv to these groups that I was a part of, just kind of casually at work. And what I found was it was quite transformative in that a lot of people have so much more inside of them than they're letting out and sharing with the world. Because as we age and as we go through growing up, we kind of get trained out of trusting ourselves, trained out of listening to our inner world, which has our creativity and has our intuition, and they're so rich. So I have this theory that all of us are endlessly creative and intuitive, that we are all uniquely so. So everyone has their own flavor to offer the world, and that the world needs it. We're there in the moment for a reason. So all of my training and all my work is about getting that out, letting us trust ourselves. And it's actually really fun to do, and it's really enlivening. And the journey of life becomes more interesting when you're working with this part of yourself, as opposed to pressing it down or trying to contain it. You can kind of, so we'll talk about shitting all over yourself,
Yeah, yeah.
rather letting it out. So that's my training and that's my work, and I totally love it.
Well, I think it's fascinating, and I like the two eyes. I like the intuition. I like the improv. I'm going to start with the improv, though, Bridget,
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
I've always been fascinated. I've always enjoyed. A lot of times people will see improv, and most of the time it's, at least in my experience, comedic, right? There's a
Often.
comedy
Yes.
aspect of improv.
Hmm.
But I started thinking, in real life, we're all doing improv like every day. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's not funny. Where you and
Right.
I are doing improv now. We talked, and I
Yes.
don't like sending out questions in advance because I want to be in the moment. I want to be present. I want to
Yeah.
listen and ask questions. I have some guidelines, but
Yeah.
really we're improving right now.
Yes.
Talk to me about that concept,
Yeah.
taking it away from what people might think of as theatrical improv
Yes. Right.
to real life improv.
Yeah, that's one of the fundamentals of improv when you're learning it, is to not, quote, try to be funny. What you want to do is be in the moment. So I'll tell you, like, that when I teach people about improv, I'm teaching these basic principles. And the idea I'm working at is getting in touch with your creativity, right? And letting it out. But the trouble is, everyone else is real creative too. So how do improvisers work together in the moment to move forward through a story or a scene or whatever they're doing? They have these really specific guidelines they're following that allow them to basically treat each other and themselves really well. So on that note, yes and is a big one. So yeah, and by the way, you're absolutely right. We all improvise all day. It's so funny. People are like, I don't want to do improv. It's like literally your whole life is improv. Every second, it never ends. And your creativity is always matching it. You're doing it all the time. You're improvising constantly. But there's ways to train yourself. So yes and, maybe you've heard of it. You've heard of
I
it?
have actually, I
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
I was
It's really
wondering if you're going to
common.
bring that
Yeah.
up. And
So it's
again,
really
I
the first
haven't
one.
done any training, but I've heard
Yeah.
enough of that. The yes,
Yeah.
or you
It's in
talk
that
about
world.
yes
Yeah,
and
I will. I'll
yeah,
explain it.
please.
Because the idea is when you walk onto a stage in improv, just to sorry, in life, you could, this was very life changing for me in college, by the way. Yes is acknowledgement. Yes is I see you, I hear you, I'm watching what's going on, and I'm very in the moment with you. The moment you start to depart from that acknowledgement, have you ever been at an improv show and it kind of gets awkward? Because
Yeah.
someone's kind of just off doing the other thing and they're the person doing it, and they're not coming together. Yes, and is I hear you and I see you, and is now here's me. So yes is acknowledgement and is build. So you're constantly acknowledging and building on what's going on together and you're tick-tocking back and forth. So someone comes in the scene and they trip on stage trying to get on it and they hit the floor. You can start the scene over, or you could say, oh my gosh, it's big shoe day. I totally forgot. How did you make your shoes that big? I'm behind. Like, I need to hurry. Let me get you up here. Dude, you're winning. Like, or, somebody freezes on stage. It's like, okay, Bob's been in cryo for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
Today's the day we're bringing him out. So you could fight those things, or you could just acknowledge them and build. And the audience loves it when you leave nothing behind, right? Well, it translates into how you treat your spouse, how you treat your coworkers. If you're in a meeting and someone's a little quiet, but they kind of whisper something, isn't it gracious to say, hey, I didn't hear that. What did you say about Wednesday? A lot of people need a little help being acknowledged. And then you say, Wednesday, actually, tell me more about that. You try and build. Salespeople can use it. It's incredibly respectful. Yes, and put you in the moment with the person in a way that's respectful.
Let me ask a question
Yeah.
about, and see, now what's going to happen is all my questions I'm going to have you back another time because I'm not going to get to all the questions that I want.
I'm like trying not to talk too fast because I have so many ideas, but yes.
No, the literal part of me, and I'm not completely literal, but when I try to follow instructions, if I heard somebody say do yes and, I would literally start every time with yes and then something. But you're really talking about yes being not the word yes necessarily,
Right.
but the acknowledgement of the
Acknowledgement.
situation.
Mhm.
And it really sounds, especially in life, there's an empathy involved,
Yes.
and there's this
Mhm.
understanding that it could be awkward for somebody else, could be uncomfortable, that it's really welcoming and empathetic. Is that what I'm hearing?
100%. That's the thing, because people hear yes and they're like, well, I don't want to agree with everything. And frankly, that wouldn't make for a very interesting scene if you're doing improv.
That's
But
right.
acknowledgement keeps things very interesting because when there's something in improv called a block, and that's when you ignore. And they say it's kind of a move that younger improvisers will use to gain control in a scene and feel more, you know, um, empowered or in control. So what you want to do is say, acknowledge as opposed to ignore, and the whole scene will start to go forward. So what you're talking about, yeah, what you were saying is when you're interacting with people, there's this theory also out there that people like to be heard, seen, and loved, right? That's
Yeah.
just true.
Yeah.
That's acknowledgement, basically. And so, but it's also the basis of a lot of really entertaining comedy, because comedy a lot of times is just what is surprising in a scene. Like, I didn't expect
Oh,
that. Right. It's often like you think you're going one way and then boom, you're off at a no. Somebody says something, you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't expect that. And that's what's funny. So within the form of acknowledgement, you can do that. But if you start to ignore and depart from each other, you really can't build an entertaining scene, just as you have a hard time building a healthy relationship, basically.
so I want to marry the other eye in here a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to start talking using both of these to go into the creativity and the
Yes.
genius, because I think everything melds together. Intuition. I'm going to ask you to define intuition first,
Yeah.
because again, in my limited scope of thinking, sometimes I'll think intuition is even a form of saying, I know what Bridget's going to say, so I'm going to ready myself, which takes me out of the improv a little bit. I'm going to ready myself to, I'm going to try to be intuitive in that. So I want to hear what your definition of intuition is and how it works in combination with what you do in improv.
That's really interesting. I never thought about the intuition being like, oh, I'm going to guess. I get it. That's what we do, right? We're going to assume, right? Anytime you assume, it's dangerous. For me, intuition is non-logical information coming in mostly through our senses. So I
Okay.
always say non-logical because people are afraid like, oh, I'm not going to be able to be logical. Intuition's like, no, you're not. That's not the part of you that it is. It is a sensory, ethereal sort of energy input. And it's really beautiful because you can marry it with logic and you're just getting the whole picture so much clearer, basically. So you can have data, you can have knowledge from the marketplace, you can have facts, and then you can have a feeling. And one thing I remember, I worked at a company downtown and they gave me a t-shirt that said data or it didn't happen. I was like, I don't really care for this t-shirt because there was such an emphasis on data. You know what you can do with data? You can end up in a corner and this data says this and this data says, oh, we
Right.
need more data. And you literally kind of lose your mind. And then you can't sleep at night. Why? Because it doesn't feel right. Even though the data is telling you something, something inside of you is telling you, no, this is not the right thing for me. Buying a house, this happens a lot. It's like, it doesn't make sense, but I want that house. Doesn't make sense, but I like that person. And you know what? Once you get used to trusting that, a lot of times you find there's a whole world of gold behind acknowledging and acknowledging and including this part of yourself. And I can tell you more about that, but that's it's non-logical input that is incredibly valuable in a situation to you. Your intuition is yours and it's specific to you. You might get information in a sense about another person or a sense for them, but it's really you bouncing off of them. You want to use it for your own life, your own decisions, and your own growth as much as possible. So
Well,
that's a starter
individually,
definition.
yeah, individually though, intuition really is about your experiences, right? To a large degree, because it feels like, again, the way that I have used the word or thought about the word, it is this, I have this intuition of impending doom, right? I'm on the golf course and there's water in front of me and in front of the green, and I have this intuition. I'm going to hit it into the, I mean, to the point, or I have an intuition that this is going to be a good event, or this can be a good podcast, or something. It feels like this is not logically, right? Like you said, it's really that feeling,
Yeah,
and
it's
it's a
just a sense.
feeling
Mhm.
really is it kind of based on everybody's own experiences,
Yeah.
scar
Right. So
tissue
that,
even,
what's that?
scar tissue even, and things like that, where you start
Right.
thinking ahead.
Well, it's interesting because the question you're asking is a question people can ask, and I don't really cover it in my classes. Or I did a seminar, 3-hour workshop last week with 40 people in a marketing agency about intuition. I leave that alone. Where does it come from? Because really, we could spend the
Okay.
rest of our lives. Because I mean, that Greek philosophers were debating that, and they were all talked about
Okay.
intuition, all of them. So what I try and say is, I believe, I'll just say, everyone has it, and that life gets better when you consciously put it to work.
Got
So
it.
a lot of us use that. It's like one time in sixth grade, I knew my mom was coming around the corner to give me my lunch. You know what I mean? People think of it as very random. What I'm trying to teach is it's there for you all the time, literally. And what I describe it as in order to get the utility out of it, because some people are gonna be like, it's my angels talking to me, it's my grandma talking to me from the grave. You know, and
All
people have
right.
all kinds of right. Because a lot of intuitive moments don't make sense. Right. I see
Right.
that water and I'm going to hit my golf ball on it is one thing. But I knew if I stepped over that staircase, something bad was there. I've had woman told me the story. She was, I was 5 years old. I went to walk up the stairs, but I was yelling, and then a copperhead snake came out of the steps. I don't know how I knew. I just knew not to go. So, like, how did she know that? I don't know.
Right. Right.
So I try not to worry too much about that. But the point is, if you can just acknowledge it, which some people won't, they'll be like, no, I'm not going to go there. I find that life calls you towards it because it's so useful and so helpful. And it's very kind and it's very loving. Intuition is not here to go like, oh, that person's icky, that person's bad. I think it's a very compassionate art form, if you will, where you're being open to what's around you and you're loving yourself enough. I think it's very self-loving practice. Say, how do I feel about this? Does this
Yeah.
feel right to me? Because how many of us have made a choice? They were kind of like, I don't know. And we kind of forced it. And later we're like, oh, I have to cancel. Or, oh, I don't have the right resources. Or, I don't know the right people here. Does it feel right? As opposed to a choice where you're like, God, I love this place. This resonates. Great word. This resonates with me. I want to keep going towards this. And then you find if you stay in that energy of resonance, the next person you meet has another great idea. And the next person you meet after that has the funding. And the next person after. And there's not like life doesn't have challenges. We're constantly going into things that are resonating and things that are really difficult. But I'll just give, I give you one, I can give you basic. Let's go to like the utilitarian stuff.
Right.
So like if you tense up, literally your shoulders are heading towards your
Yeah. Yeah.
ears as
Yeah.
someone's talking. That's often a sign of non-resonance. Now we've been taught to tough it out, right? Our culture has a lot of that. It's like, hey man, just tough it out, just get through it. Sometimes you can, but if you have an open choice and you're doing this, I would pause. I call it the pause. Take a pause, because the other thing you can do is get to a option where you go, oh, there it is. That sounds good. Yeah, let's meet tomorrow at 3. I really don't have time today.
Okay. I'm scrapping my next question for a second because so what you're
You're
what you're talking
improvising.
about, and that's a great example, but body language gives cues to
Body sensory
other
input.
people.
Absolutely.
So
Yep.
what you
Getting
just did
smaller
and
versus getting
shrugging,
bigger.
I mean,
Yep.
just even if you see somebody do that, you can sense discomfort or unease as the other person. And
Yes.
really, if you're attuned to whether you think of it as improv or not, but just being
Yes.
empathetic, you have that
Mhm.
opportunity. So I'm going to meld in my next question. In your work, it feels like you're working with teams. You're
Yes.
working with whether they're leadership teams or managerial teams, however that works, who are working with each other in an effort to improve communication, to
Yes.
improve collaboration, to
Yep.
improve understanding and empathy and welcoming of ideas and things
Yes.
like that. Talk some more about that.
Yes, and as I
Yes,
said,
and
my friend used to tease me in my last job. She's like, "You're really into that yes and thing," because I would literally be on everything. I'm like, "Yes and." Da, da. Um, I also do one-on-one stuff. So, and I also teach public courses. So, if this is interesting to any of your listeners, I'm setting up a new round of courses for September.
oh, cool.
Um, you can find them on bridgetquigg.com. I literally need to put them up there right away, but by mid September 15th. So, I started out doing this out of a passion project because I went through an illness in my early 20s. And long story short, I flunked out of med school. It's a whole crazy story, but I was very sick, and learning to trust my intuition, which never would have brought me to medical school, was how I healed. So long story short, I became a total hobbyist, right? Because you can't go to school for this. How do you learn about this? You read books, you go to seminars. So I started a class, but when I bring it to corporate settings, you mentioned a lot of great things about collaboration. It's also what I really want in life. I feel like it's my mission. I want everyone to feel confident in themselves. I
Yeah.
really do. I'm profoundly creative. I'm profoundly sensitive and aware and intuitive, and I can take care of myself. I can make decisions for myself. I don't have, you can go ask 20 people. Sometimes you need to do that. Absolutely. But we really owe it to ourselves to hear ourselves. So more examples is like sometimes either you get tight or you feel relief. That'd be another one. If the word should pops out of your mouth when you're making a decision, listen to that. So it's like, oh yeah, I really should. And if you kind of stop breathing, pause. Okay, how do I need to remodel this situation for myself? The word should and watching for it come out of my mouth, it's very subconscious. It just happens, changed my life. And the joke is you stop shoulding all over yourself because when you often, not always, that the should is an external input. It's someone wishing you would go. It's someone needing you there. It's what your grandma used to tell you, what the camp counselor said 50 years ago. But your truth isn't behind the should. Your truth is like, oh, I don't really want to go. Just as shouldn't, I really shouldn't, but I really want to. I really want to book that trip to Mexico in January because I know it's going to be cold. Let me see if we can pull it off. Right? That's the shouldn't. Or we really shouldn't invest in this, but I have a feeling it might work. Maybe we
Is
should
the
look into
shouldn't
this a little bit
talking
more.
yourself out of your intuition?
Shouldn't is revealing what you would like often. Like I
Okay.
really shouldn't, but I really want to. So
Okay.
those two words can be really useful. Just is another one. Oh, I guess I'll just do that. You really haven't given yourself enough time. Not always, but a lot of times, if your energy drops when you say it, you haven't actually given yourself enough time. Maybe you need more information. Maybe you need a little more conversation with the other person to get to a deal, if you will, that works for you, that is healthy for you. And honestly, my theory is I have noticed for them as well.
Okay.
Usually what's good for you is often in the end, although they may fight it, health. If you really know, if you're really trained your intuition, you know, like, no, this is good. The other person will have to maybe grow a little, but a lot of times they can meet you or they can't, and you kind of suffer through, and the next time goes better. You know what I mean? There's no perfect here, right? But it
Yeah.
is a beautiful practice. And I found I was healthier physically and happier by following it.
Before I start going into the You're a Genius workshops and talking about creative genius, because I
Mm-hmm.
find that
Yeah,
really
we'll do
interesting
that.
as well too. It's interesting that I can imagine you giving this type of a workshop, this type of a presentation to a group of people, to a team,
Sure.
right?
Yes.
However, when you're maybe doing this on a one-on-one, the other
Yeah.
people they're dealing with don't have the rules. Not
Yes.
that they're rules, but they you
They've
know
gone off, yeah, on a tangent. Kooky. Yeah,
they don't know the yes and, or they don't,
I
it's
know.
like, hey, wait a minute,
Mm-hmm.
that's not the
I
rules.
know.
Talk
Mm-hmm.
about the
Yeah.
ability, and because the more you talk about intuition, the more I think of it as that inner voice. We all call it a
Mm,
different thing.
sure.
It's that inner voice inside of you that
Mm-hmm.
is talking to us
Mm-hmm.
constantly. Talk about when you might be a person who is in sales, you might be
Sure.
a person who is an entrepreneur, or you're
Mm-hmm.
working with people, and you want to be able to be better at what you're doing and communicating. The other
Yes.
person doesn't know the rules. How do
Yep.
you,
I get it. I get it.
how does somebody best deal with those improvisational
Mm-hmm.
moments in business and in life? I mean, talking about business, but you have kids, you have spouses, you have
Oh yeah.
significant others, you have
All of it.
associations you're part of.
Mm-hmm. I like the joke that it's a magic carpet ride once you get into your intuition because you're going somewhere good, but you don't have a steering wheel. You're kind of like going, but It doesn't really matter if the other person has the rules necessarily. And you'll find as you really study your intuition, it's going to be just interesting to you. A lot of times it's
Okay.
fun to meet other people who are into it.
Yeah.
That's where frankly, my classes are fun or my workshops are fun because you're in a group that where everybody's like, oh yeah, I want to
Right.
know more. But it's really about holding your integrity, like with so many things in life. But what I find is as I study my intuition more, I tend to gravitate and find situations that not have to grapple and fight as often. I cleared my life out. One of the parts of intuition is literally clutter clearing. How does my space feel to me? Oh, I don't really like that mirror that I dragged in off the street. I had a student. She came in one night to her apartment, which she was thinking of leaving so she could buy a home because she wanted to like, get her condo in Seattle. And she sat on the couch and she's like, I don't like that mirror I dragged in off the street. Took it out, put it in the hallway. I don't really like that other thing. She said by the end of the night, she had 2 pairs of pants left and decided she needed to at least keep them. But she decided, oh, I love my apartment. I love where I live. I never want to leave here. She had filled it with clutter. So as you study your intuition, you start to use it, and it's no harm or mean words towards anybody, but you're finding people who resonate with you. And if something isn't resonate, it's okay. Give it time. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe a year from now, you'll find you're not in that group anymore, or you'll find you've transformed that group by being yourself more. Does that make sense? So it's
Absolutely.
also not a rush. There's no, ignition on some sort of explosive that you have to do. I like to say it's like deciding whether you want a latte or a mocha is a great
Hmm.
place to start with your intuition. Oh, I want a latte. That's interesting. Why do I want chocolate? I don't know. I just want a latte, right? It's that practicing of hearing yourself. There's your inner eye. I mean, we could go into a bunch of stuff. Some people are very auditory, like you said, but some people have a very strong fear voice, right? So they have to go through the
Yeah.
healing process of going, that's my fear, that's my anxiety. When I sink into my heart or I take a breath, I do want that. I can take that risk, or I'm ready for that thing, right? So it's a process. It's a really beautiful process.
Okay. I'm going to ask one other question before we dive
Yeah.
in. the
Yeah.
other. I can do that. It's my show. And by the way,
You're doing great.
I would pick mocha every time. So
I
sometimes I
like
actually
it.
should do the other one. And that
No,
one
no. Yeah,
yeah,
you
I
want the
should
mocha.
I should be doing
Life's
that.
short. Have the mocha.
Um, I want you to talk about the fear voice
Yeah.
because and this okay, how about this? How about if I merge these two questions together? Because I was going to say, you say everyone is a creative genius. You said that here
Yes.
already, and it's in.
Hmm.
And by the
I
way,
believe it.
all of your stuff will be on the show notes. We'll make sure that
Okay,
that's all
cool.
included.
Yeah, yeah.
My question is, what do you mean by that?
Yeah.
And why do so many people struggle to believe it themselves?
Yes.
And now I'm wondering if the word, when we start talking about fear, that's got to be
Hmm.
part of it. So maybe if you could talk a little
Yeah.
bit about creative genius, why do people struggle with it? And
Yeah.
if it's fear, where does that come into play?
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. Yeah, well, this gets back to that should thing, right? Which I said is sort of an external norm that wants to kind of flatten your intuition or creativity.
Right.
So the idea that everyone's a creative genius, this is a very improv idea that in improv all are welcome. And down to the person who won't even speak, but their presence or what they do in the scene. I was a tumbleweed in many a desert scene when I was first learning improv. Like everyone has a place, right? Everyone matters is a
Okay.
very fundamental rule. One of the other rules they'll say is everything's an offer and we accept all offers. That's one of the first rules of the stage. Nothing's excluded. Obviously somebody's way out of hand or being cruel or being criminal, like no. But I mean, we're not thinking about that sort of a situation. So the idea is that everyone has something to offer. Some people are more skilled and more comfortable in presenting themselves. So I think one of my dreams is that everyone gets to that place. But often with creativity, I'll stay with that for a moment. We think it's like someone who can paint frescoes on the Sistine Chapel. You know what I mean? Someone who can design the wing of an airplane. What about someone who packs a trunk well? What about someone who can take 3 ingredients and make you the most delicious meal you've ever had in your life? What about
Mm.
someone who can figure out how to get somewhere when the bridge is closed and made it faster than everyone else? That's creative. All of that is creative. It all matters. We're constantly, literally constantly being creative. How you get dressed in the morning, what you eat for a meal. It's all coming actually from inside of you. And it's really powerful and it's really elegant and it's very specific to you. So I try and get people, and what I do in these workshops, by the way, for Creative Genius, that workshop, it's all improv games. And in each game, there's a rule. So for example, another one we've done yes and everything's an offer. We accept all offers. Another one is make your partner look good. That is one of the rules of the stage. You can't check if your fly is down. You can't be upset that your parents are in the front row. You are in the moment and you are looking around at everyone else and what they're doing and trying to elevate the offer they just gave you. You're trying to yes and it, right? And you're trusting that your and is worthy. and it's going to bring beauty to the moment. And they're going to listen to your and they're going to yes and you. So it sounds utopian, but it's a mindset. And
No,
if I
it's about,
can,
and I don't mean it's about trusting yourself.
it's
And
trusting yourself a lot
so
of it is
as I
trusting
was
yourself.
listening to you, Bridget, I heard people from my life in different places say, I'm not they're talking about me, they're talking about
Oh,
themselves.
I get it.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not creative. I
Yep.
wish I was creative, like,
Mm-hmm.
and all of a sudden I just these all kind of
Yeah.
flashed in. I could hear them as you're talking, and as you're finishing that thought, the word trust
Yes.
really trust and fear. I think it's the fear of failure,
Mhm.
it's the fear of rejection,
Absolutely.
fear of not being accepted. It's all of that
Absolutely.
fear,
Yeah.
but really it's so rooted in ourselves, not the
Yes.
other people.
Well said. Ooh, beautifully said. Yeah. Literally the first two words on my website are trust yourself. So the other thing I was going to say about that, there's a beautiful quote from William Wordsworth, who was a famous poet, in the mid 1800s, and they in England. But he said he used to say, and this is interesting too. People were thinking about this all back then. But he said, faith is passionate intuition. So the idea is, I know this, I feel this, and in fact, and I have 1,000 stories where when I get good with my intuition, I'll break down a brick wall, or I'll sit there and wait for it to fall because I know it's going to fall. Like I know I'm on my right path. I can feel it in my whole body. And I'll like getting to the ferry and choosing the right time. I've had absolute kooky miracles where I'm the last one and that rope's around the bumper, man. But I just had a strong sense if I leave now, I'm going to make that ferry. And I do. I mean, that's a very Seattle example, but you get the idea.
It
So
is.
yeah. And people thinking they're not creative, absolutely taught to them. They sure thought they were creative when they were 2 and 3. Oh boy, did they ever, man. They were painting the walls, right? They were having a great time. It's all to normalize, which is okay. Like we want to get along with people. I'm not asking people to explode their lives, but anytime you can give us like, I'm going to put on my slippers right now. Gosh, that feels nice. Just to give yourself that treat. Because, as opposed to like, no, Elda, I shouldn't, I should. Yeah, no, give yourself a little bit of treat. All those little self-love moments where you hear what you want and you do it, or you hear what you prefer and you move towards it are hugely important for actually your mental health and your heart health, you
Oh,
know?
yeah.
And it's not hard and not scary. The scary voice often wants you to get smaller.
Yeah.
Um, or maybe it wants you to do something that would like hurt you. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure I'm not a mental health expert. I'm sure there's whole other ranges of stuff. But I'm
Right.
talking for the average person, it's like, no, I probably wouldn't be able to figure it out. I mean, I do comedy. I often
We're going
book
to
the
talk about
theater.
that at the
Yeah,
very end. I
but
want to talk
I
about
book the theater before I've written the set. I've learned that I have to do it. You have
you
to
have
book
to
the
do
theater
it.
before you've written the set, and it always comes.
So I got to ask a question because I know that you work with executives. You've also worked with, it says tweens, like, teen,
Yeah, yeah,
young
yeah,
people.
yeah.
So I have grandchildren that are 8, 6, and twin 3-year-olds.
Wow,
And
cool.
if anybody wants to see what confidence is, let's go see my 3-year-old grandson or even any of the grandchildren.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
are they are fearless, right?
yeah, yeah.
However, at some point, because you talked about that, at
Mhm.
some point, something happens somewhere. I don't know if it's in the
Yeah, yeah.
tweens, it's in the
Mhm.
teens. I don't know. It's society. Something happens to us, even in high school, and maybe this is a high school guy thing, still pretty darn confident.
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know if it's scar tissue of the failures or what it is.
Sure,
What
sure.
happens to us,
Yeah,
and it doesn't have to be overly scientific, but what happens to us from that scary
yeah.
voice? Why does that
Right.
materialize more?
Well, I mean, what I want to say is we're taught to fear, basically, because you are fearless when you're a kid, right? And we're taught to fear so we can survive, and we
Right.
can get along and people like us. And I think it's always a teeter-totter. Even with me today using my intuition, I have to find the words. I want to bring it to people in a way that's kind. It's like whether I want to be a part of something, I don't want to be a part of something. I'm trying to find the right words, for example. That's a very adult, sophisticated thing. And I have to use my intuition. That's a whole nother topic. Writing an email using your intuition. Does the email feel right? That's all. So what happens, to be honest, I'm not totally sure. I just know it's an
Yeah.
accumulation. And like I like to say, it could have been a sibling, could have been a camp counselor. Everyone wants to blame their parents, man. It could have been a commercial on television that got
Sure.
you thinking that flying in airplanes isn't safe, for example, or whatever it is, or
Right.
I could
Right.
never be a pilot because whatever reason. So it's I consider intuition a lifelong study because you're
Yeah.
constantly uncovering an area you're like, oh, I don't know. And you're like, huh. Or someone comes into your life where you're like, I don't know how to handle this.
Yeah.
I need to deal with this and I want to be kind, but I also don't want to get, submarined here. I want to
Yeah.
survive it. So, yeah, there's a
So
lot of
we're
love in it.
as we kind of start wrapping up, I want to ask you about this, and then I want you to share with people how they can learn more about working with you or
Sure.
getting your things. When I first got introduced to you before I met, I found you on YouTube on one of your comedy that you
Yeah.
did, and I
Yeah.
thought it was fantastic because we
Thank you.
do share something. We're a Catholic, grew up Catholic,
Yes.
and
Yes.
you talked about, and it was like, oh, we may not be the same gender, but we have the same thing going on there.
Sure. Sure.
It was just funny, but I really enjoyed watching that, and uh, I want to ask, how did you
All right.
find your way into doing stand-up comedy,
I know.
and how has that helped you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting thought. I mean, I'll just say this, and this is in one of my other shows. I've done 5 one-woman shows for the record, and one of them was about growing up in a setting where, and I'm not picking on my family, kind of women weren't funny, right? Like that's kind of a theme that I was raised in, whereas the men were very funny and kind of dominant. And they were very funny. There was a lot of humor in my family, very Irish Catholic family. And so it was when I got out of really college, and I had a few people along the way be like, "Oh, you're so funny," but I kind of didn't believe them. And then one night, one time, a friend of mine said, "Hey, they're doing storytelling night. You should come down to a storytelling night." No, granted, I did improv and I'd quote done this, but I remember I told a story that night and people were like practically rolling in the aisles. I mean, they were just cracking up. And it's like I finally got it. It's like, oh, I was funny. Like, and the woman who produced the show, she's like, "Can you do another one? This was great." And I went from there basically into doing more individual stuff. So that was kind of my breakthrough moment, I would say. But even then, my first few one-woman shows, I wouldn't list them as comedy shows. I would just say storytelling night. And it
Oh,
would took
oh,
me a while to label my work as comedy because you're promising people they're going to pay you money and you're going to make them laugh. That's really a bold move, and it takes a little bit of confidence. But I got invited into a stand-up troupe. Basically, I was starting to getting invited into group settings where I got to play. I also did a lot of music. I was at a and so just getting up on stage a lot loosens you up and allows you to just be like, "Hey, I'll pull it off." But moving towards comedy it took a lot of bravery for me.
yeah,
But now I'm like, screw it, it's going to work. I'm going to do it.
yeah,
I'm going to come up with something. Even now, I have my show in October. I'm just starting to work on my set in Capitol Hill in Seattle. And I have this song coming to me because I'm allowing my creative energy to come in about losing a lane of traffic. Everywhere I go, I lose a lane. Orange cone swirling like a hurricane. Like I've gained the first line. So I write
yeah.
comedic songs, but it's like all summer in Seattle, all we've done is lost lanes of traffic. It's absolutely maddening.
I
So I just
know.
want to write a whole song about that. And I just know I'm going to do it. I can feel it, right? So
Yeah.
that'll be in my show. So I don't know if that answers your question, but a lot of little moments added up to me having the confidence to have a comedy hour. And I bring in new comics and I
It
help them.
absolutely answers my question. Just the second part of how has that
Oh yeah.
changed, improved what you
Yeah.
do?
Yeah. Well, the thing that always comes to mind for me, well, so yes, even when I'm teaching people intuition or creativity or anything I'm doing, I have a fundamental entertainer vibe to me, right? So I do a lot of emceeing of events.
Yeah.
I do panels, like women's panels on career, but I'm often adding little jokes or little bits. And I feel more confident that I can do that. But I will say this also in the world of business, I'm 6 feet tall, which you can't tell by looking at me. So I have a bit of stature, but I also have used humor a lot to get ahead, but be successful in the work world.
Yeah.
Men like humor. Like if you can crack a joke quicker than they can, they're aware. I got a lot of leadership positions. I think humor was actually part of that
Yeah.
because people respect humor. So I will say that's I think assisted in my career.
Absolutely. So, speaking of your career, you got a lot of things going on. For those watching or listening, I'm going to put them all in the show
Mm-hmm.
notes. Tell us some of the things that you're doing where they can take part in,
Thank you.
including your upcoming workshops on
Comedy.
September
Oh,
15th. Yeah.
workshop. Yes, yes. Okay, yeah, yeah. Never mind. So yeah, so I always have one-on-ones available if you want to work on a creative project or do intuition training. That's always there. I don't
Okay.
charge much. It's very accessible. It's right at the top of my website. So if you're interested in just getting started, I will start a round of classes. So I do public intuition classes. You'll be able to sign up on my website under It says classes at the top. And again, not very expensive, very intimate. I do them on Zoom, 1 hour a week for 5 weeks is my level one intuition. I have level two after you finish that, and level three after that. So you
Okay.
can get into a community of people who are studying their intuition. And then my comedy show I do is called Quiggy Comedy Hour. And I do it because it's Quigg's a funny name. And I do it at once a quarter. It's called Ada's Lab in Seattle. It's a venue I'm currently just holds 35 people. They're really small shows, but it's perfect for me. And it's on Capitol Hill. And you can also find that information on my website. But the best thing is to sign up for my newsletter. I have a very infrequent, highly informative, very simple newsletter if you want to know what's going on. And then I'm on YouTube a ton if you want to see comedy there.
Yeah.
I'm there.
And I recommend that to people. Absolutely. Yep.
And I have improv and intuition training there as well for people.
Okay.
I wrote a book on intuition. It's there. I read it chapter by chapter. You don't even have to buy it. You can just listen to it for free. So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Bridget, thank you so much. I think I have more questions I didn't get to. I'll have to do this again sometime if you're game. And you should say you should. Well, Bridget, I know what everybody should be doing is they should be following you, getting your content, signing up with you. This was great. I hope we'll have you back for more later at another
Yeah.
show. But until then, thank you very much for being on today, and we hope to be talking again soon. Hey everybody, thanks for joining us on the Chasing Unleashed podcast. We'll be doing more of these over the coming months and who knows how long. But the best way to know is to subscribe, to like, and all of that stuff. You know what to do. Until then, go out there and keep chasing Unleashed. So long.